SpaceX is officially going public, and this changes everything. But what does it mean for a stock like Rklb? Does Rklb get crushed, or is this actually a massive opportunity? In this video, I'm going to be breaking down what happens next to Rklb stock, plus the differences in their financial and operational ways of doing business between SpaceX and Rklb. Let's get into it. As you may have heard, SpaceX is now going public, and it should be expected in June 2026 or July 2026. So I thought it was appropriate to kind of go over Rklb and what could happen to their stock, since they're kind of the biggest competitor. They're kind of considered number two. So I wanted to go over what you can expect from the stock, plus the differences financially and operationally between SpaceX and Rklb. So as you can see, this is just their rockets going after each other, right? They both have their different things. Oh, eat my efficiency and here's my reusability. Earth is loving it, but let's be real, Earth is not really loving all this rocket fuel being burned. But anyways, the topics of discussion will be Rklb stock after the SpaceX IPO, financial differences, and the operational differences. Yes, I know I spelled that wrong. I just saw it, whatever. But what will happen to Rklb stock after the SpaceX IPO, right? This is what a lot of people are going to be wondering about because, you know, they're similar in businesses. A SpaceX IPO is expected to trigger a significant two-phase response across the aerospace sector. In the short term, new space stocks often experience a halo effect, rising on sector-wide enthusiasm. However, long-term projections suggest a potential oxygen-sucking event where investors sell off smaller competitors to consolidate capital into SpaceX. Essentially, once SpaceX does go public, they might start selling off these other companies so they can start having a piece of SpaceX. So the short-term halo effect, there's basically a broad surge in sympathy plays as investors seek exposure to the space economy. Direct competitors, stocks like Rklb and Firefly Aerospace have recently jumped. Tend to say it's been all over the place, honestly, since the IPO chatter. And then the valuation re-rating. Analysts suggest that SpaceX's expected 1.5 to 1.75 trillion valuation will force Wall Street to reevaluate the entire sector's pricing. So that's going to be one thing, right? We don't know what people are going to say. Well, SpaceX is worth this much, then what is this company really worth, right? So it's going to be interesting on how we reevaluate the whole sector. The long-term market pressure. Analysts warn that once SpaceX is public, it may drain liquidity from the rest of the industry. Capital displacement. Investors may sell second-tier space stocks to raise cash for the SpaceX IPO, potentially leading to a sharp sell-off in smaller firms. Competitive squeeze. Fresh capital, about 50 to 75 billion, would allow SpaceX to outbid traditional contractors and further dominate launch and satellite manufacturing. So this is one thing, is that when it actually does go public, again, people might want to start selling out of these other companies and say, look, SpaceX is the dominant player. I want a piece of that first, right? That's very possible and probably likely. The companies here, we have two, right? We have small launch satellites and legacy aerospace and somewhat integrated parts, but they're more into this, right? It could be volatile and stagnant and bearish, right? There's going to be an initial surge on hype followed by a potential sell-off as capital shifts. And then challenges to the business models as changing of the guard narrative, which it's not really changing of the guard since SpaceX is already number one, but it could be in terms of like changing of the guard with the stock, right? Rklb is like the number one. Like, oh, who's doing these launches and stuff? Well, it's going to be Rklb. If you want to buy a piece of stock, if you want to have some money into that, you know, industry, you're going to buy Rklb. But now that will change, right? That narrative will change. This is the stock. Had some successful launches reported, right? So it started boosting up. Then they had some more successful launches, boosted up. And then, of course, we had some of the Bloomberg reports of the SpaceX IPO. And so that, you know, popped up. I mean, look at that. Look at what happened to that, right? And then it shot back down a little bit. Then we have another SpaceX. Now it's like the IPO is confirmed. Where is it going to go from here, right? If we hit these highs, it's 45% from where it is today. So you're looking, you know, that's a pretty good gain if it hits all-time highs again. Now, who knows exactly what that it could do that. It could do exactly what it did here and then sell off after the IPO. It could boost back up and then sell right after the IPO. I personally think that could happen. I think over the next few months, Rklb could really shoot up
and then take a crash down, right? Or it would be the opposite. As people are preparing for SpaceX, maybe they start selling out of Rocket Lab, and then so much of the selling pressure is gone, and then people start buying back into it. But I do believe that this is the more likely scenario, is that it boosts up before and then it comes back down after the SpaceX IPO. The financial differences between Rocket Lab and SpaceX. Rocket Lab is widely considered the second most successful private orbital launch company in the US after SpaceX. They are direct competitors in the specific segments and are moving toward a more head-to-head rivalry. So this is kind of their key financial comparison. As you can see, the annual revenue, SpaceX and Rocket Lab. You have SpaceX making about 25 times as much as Rocket Lab. Their operating profit is about 45 times. I mean, even though they are at a loss, I just did 8 billion divided by 182. It was 44. I added an extra 182 and it was 45, right? But it's different when it's a loss. So it's a lot bigger than 45, but you know, if you get what I'm saying. So the valuation, it's about 22 times. SpaceX is about 22 times more valuable than Rocket Lab. And the launch frequency is about 9.5 times as much. They've had 170 launches and they've had 18 launches. And then the valuation multiple is 50x revenue and then the 60x revenue. So as you can see, SpaceX is doing way bigger numbers. In terms of valuation and with their revenue, it's actually not, like you could say SpaceX is undervalued at an 800 billion, right? If they go public for 1.5 trillion, that changes things, right? Now this is, you know, the valuation and market cap, it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be like 45 times or something like that. But at the same time, this is going to go up tremendously as well, right? This will double. It'll be 100x the revenue. So you have that. SpaceX generated approximately 8 billion in operating profit, revenue roughly about 15 to 16 billion in 2025. It's a 31% increase from 2024. The company achieved extraordinary EBITDA margin of 50 to 53%, which is more typical of a software company than a traditional aerospace firm. The primary profit driver, the vast majority of SpaceX profit revenue growth, is now driven by Starlink rather than its rocket launch business. Starlink contributed roughly about 10.4 billion, nearly 70% of the total 2025 revenue. Starlink ended 2025 with 9.2 million active subscribers, doubling its base for the second consecutive year. While SpaceX dominates 82% of the global commercial launch market, this segment is increasingly viewed as low-margin utility that enables the high-margin Starlink business. So Starlink is huge for SpaceX, right? That's huge. And that is something Rocket Lab does not have. 2026 projections. Analysts expect a significant scale up as the company prepares for its mid-2026 IPO, projected to reach 22 to 24 billion in 2026. Starlink alone is expected to approach 5 billion in free cash flow as CapEx intensity declines. And then NASA contracts are expected to account for only 5% of total revenue of 2026 as commercial and consumer streams take over. So again, SpaceX is being very dominant. I'm not going to go over all the Rocket Lab because I kind of went over what they're doing, and all of their stuff is pretty public as well. And I just really wanted to go over SpaceX's and what they do. And then you can kind of compare and contrast. So then we have the operational differences, right? SpaceX has reached consistent cash flow positivity, largely funded by Starlink's 9 million subscribers. In contrast, Rocket Lab remains unprofitable due to high CapEx for its Neutron rocket. SpaceX dominates the heavy lift and satellite constellation markets. Rocket Lab leads the dedicated small satellite launch market, but is aggressively pivoting to become a vertically integrated space systems provider, with roughly 65 to 75 of its revenue now coming from satellite components and spacecraft manufacturing rather than launches. Now, if you remember when we went back to like which industries are going to be bullish and bearish when it comes to their stocks, the pieces, right, the components, satellite components, the rocket components, all of that was actually on the bullish side. So if they can kind of veer towards that, then they become more bullish. Both companies trade at high multiples. SpaceX upcoming mid-2026 IPO targets 1.5 trillion Valuation, while Rocket Lab stock surged on the back of its record 1.85 billion backlog. The move to direct competition, Neutron versus Falcon 9. Rocket Lab is currently developing Neutron, a medium-lift reusable rocket specifically designed to compete with SpaceX's workhorse, the Falcon 9. By launching Neutron, anticipated for mid-2026, Rocket Lab intends to break SpaceX's monopoly on medium-lift launches and compete for lucrative national security and constellation contracts. Rocket Lab aims for a launch price of approximately $55 million for a dedicated Neutron flight, positioning it as a direct alternative to the $70 million for Falcon 9. So they're obviously trying to compete almost directly with SpaceX, and we're going to kind of see how that works out. Key strategic differences. Rocket Lab has aggressively diversified beyond just launch. About 72% of its gross profit comes from Space Systems segment, which designs and builds satellite components and buses for other companies. So again, back to the components part, if they can really start doing that, then they become more profitable. While SpaceX focuses on massive scale and ultimate goal of Mars, Rocket Lab positions itself as an end-to-end space service provider for Earth-based commercial and government needs. Obviously, SpaceX has these ultimate goals of being at Mars and doing all this other stuff, but they're also making a lot of other money, right? SpaceX currently operates at a vastly different scale than Rocket Lab, primarily due to its high-margin Starlink business. Rocket Lab is often considered the distant second to SpaceX. It is currently prioritizing heavy R&D spending for its upcoming Neutron rocket rather than near-term profitability. So my final thoughts is Rocket Lab is going to go up until SpaceX IPO. Rocket Lab could be stagnating after the IPO, possibly going down, but I do believe the business Rocket Lab continues strong growth throughout time. So that is just my opinion. Please give it a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. So yeah, this is my final thoughts. I do believe Rocket Lab is a good business. Right now, when you talk about a business that is not profitable and you have a company that is profitable in the same space, in the same industry, and is completely, basically the number one. I mean, if number one is highly profitable and number two is not profitable, it's trying to make its way up there, a lot of people are going to go with number one. And I do think Rocket Lab, the stock is going to have trouble. I believe the business is going to be fine. The business will continue to go, and in maybe 10, 15 years will be a way bigger competitor to SpaceX. But as of now, they are not nearly close to what SpaceX is. They may be number two, but they are a definitely distant number two to SpaceX. And I do think a lot of capital is going to flow into SpaceX. I mean, I knew someone that worked at SpaceX, and I was trying to figure out a way, hey, can I get some SpaceX stock? You got stock options? I want some. Can I buy them from you and we make a deal somehow? I don't know what. Let's do it. But I do believe SpaceX is going to go crazy. I do think SpaceX could go back down to like a $1 trillion market cap after its IPO. It can go back down, as a lot of IPOs do. But, just in general, Wall Street, if they're buying Rocket Lab and you're holding on to Rocket Lab and you have, let's say you have $100,000, let's say $500,000 in the Rocket Lab, and SpaceX comes out, you might just say, hey, I want to diversify. I'm going to take out some from Rocket Lab and put into SpaceX. Maybe you take, half of what you put in SpaceX and you put that all towards SpaceX and some into SpaceX, right? There's going to be a lot of that, but you have to remember there will be a lot of capital movement, a lot of money moving around. And I think Rocket Lab will be a victim to it when SpaceX goes IPO. But as of now, up until that IPO, I think Rocket Lab could actually skyrocket to about that 45% range. So anyway, please give a like and subscribe. I really appreciate everyone who has been watching my stuff. And never forget to earn it, save it, invest it, buy low, sell high. I want assets, not liabilities, and you can count on compounded interest.